In preparation for this season and the start of the new year for the NFL, I've made a video about the draft and how we could go about fixing a lot of our issues with the draft alone. I've talked about the money situation and how we shouldn't really worry too much about the money because it's not as bad as we think it is. And I am now going to get into this free agency situation. Round 1 of free agency starts soon, so let's talk about how we can do some things there. Dolphins fans, thank you for checking out my channel. I appreciate it. It helps a bunch when you comment, like, view. It all helps a bunch. So thank you very much. As you can tell, my voice is even worse now. Whatever the sickness was, it's got me. It got a hold of me good. So apologies for the scratchiness and the lack of a tone in my voice. I'll try to do this as long as I can. We've talked about the draft. We've talked about the money situation, and I need to get into some of this free agency stuff. Round 1 of free agency is starting soon, and there's some things and some reasons why free agency is almost as important as the draft. I do not think free agency is as important. However, if we handle free agency properly, if we do what we should do in free agency and not screw around, we could wind up being able to do our draft in a certain way that would help our team even more. Now, when you draft and when you go to the draft and you pick players based on team needs, you can do that, and it does help. However, in that process, you tend to lose some of the talent that's going into the league just because you have certain needs that you need to pick above the best player available. Now, the benefit of going BPA, best player available, is that you always wind up with the better talent, or the best talent you can in the draft class. And ideally, what a team should want to do is to be able to draft BPA. The previous primer for the draft that I posted, that video is assuming that we didn't have free agency. This was saying that we should try to fix as much as we can with the draft, and if we didn't have free agency, here's how I would do it. We do have free agency. Thank goodness for that. We have 2 rounds of it. Round 1 is coming up very shortly, and in some ways it's already begun, so let's be realistic. So the way I want to do this is, the first thing I want to do is talk about the free agents that we have on our team, and I want to discuss the ones that we really should be trying to re-sign. The list isn't as long and distinguished as everybody wants you to think, so let's talk about it. Number 1, Tyus Bowser. I think that he had a good year, and I would love to see him come back. I do not think he's the end-all solution for the Dolphins at linebacker, but I do think we could get him into a very, very inexpensive contract, and I think it would be worth pursuing keeping him on the team. The next one on that list is Matt Dickerson. He's a defensive lineman. Didn't play much, but I would like to keep him on the team. Once again, these are minimal contracts, not a big deal. This one here is Tyler Huntley. Now, I'm going to talk about in our list here, the next thing I go through here, I'm going to bring up the quarterback situation, and I kind of think that we should move on from Tyler Huntley. However, if the Dolphins decided to keep him, if they could keep on a very, very small contract, I would be okay with him being our number 3, not our number 2. So keep that in mind. Let's see here. Deshaun Hand. I think we should keep Deshaun Hand. He had some quality snaps for us last year, played well, and I'd like to see him continue on that path of growth. He has been improving. He's a good player. He's not great, not elite, but definitely worth keeping on the team, especially for the kind of contract that he's going to demand. Let's see. River Craycraft, definitely should be looking to re-sign him. And once again, it'll be a small contract, and it's worth hanging on to him strictly because of the route running capabilities that he has and the relationship he has with Tua. So definitely want to look into keeping River Craycraft. Anthony Walker Jr., I would be okay with re-signing him as long as the contract isn't too bad. And these, like I said, none of these are overwhelming contracts that are going to hurt us immensely. Okay? And if you make sure you watch that video I made about the money situation, because that is kind of guiding my decisions here with the free agency class. So Elijah Campbell is another one. He's a safety for us, and seeing as how we're hurting at safety, and he's got a year of experience with us, or he's got some experience with us, I think that we should look into re-signing him. Once again, smaller contract, no big deal. And I'm only talking about the ones that I think we should re-sign. So if you don't hear a player's name called during this list of free agents, then I don't think we should keep them. It's people we can move on from, and I'm not going to waste my time with that. I'm talking about how I would do this and make this right. Now, talked about Elijah Campbell. The next one on this list, and this one's a maybe, I'm unsure. It depends on how we do with the free agency situation. Benito Jones, our defensive lineman, he had some quality play time. Definitely helped out a little bit here and there. Made a lot of mistakes too, and I feel like we could find somebody to fill that gap. That would be better than Benito Jones. So I'm kind of hemming and hawing there. I'm not too sure how it would go, but that's something that I would keep an eye on. Siran Neal, I would try to re-sign him, if anything, for his impact in special teams, especially seeing as how we're going to have a new special teams coordinator this year. I feel like having Siran Neal on special teams and as a backup safety, that would be extremely helpful. Well, backup cornerback, I'm sorry. That would be extremely helpful to have him on the team. Calais Campbell, I don't think he's going to be with Miami this year. He wants a Super Bowl, and I don't think that he's going to get it with Miami this year. And I think that if he re-signs with anybody and if he's going to play again, I don't think it'll be in Miami. If it does, great, because I love Calais Campbell, and I would love to have him back. But who knows what's going to happen there. Time will tell with Calais Campbell. Jordan Poyer, I said it off the top of my head. I shouldn't have. We're letting him go, assuming that. Robert Jones. Robert Jones could end up back on this team, and if he was a depth piece or a backup player, I would be okay with that. I would be okay with having Robert Jones, but not as a starter. So keep that in mind. And these are all players that are not going to reach for a lot of money, okay? It's just not going to happen. Liam Eichenberg, the Liam Eichenberg experiment is over, and he needs to go. He's not even worth having as a backup on this team or a depth piece. Definitely not a rotational player. So let Liam Eichenberg roll on and find some greener pastures to play in. Braxton Berrios, I would be okay with re-signing him as long as the money is extremely light and we don't treat that as, oh, we got our next receiver. It's not like that. This would be a depth signing at the best. And I'd be okay with that because the money would reflect that. Duke Riley. Duke Riley is one of the most frustrating Miami Dolphins that I've ever watched play. He's a very good special teamer. However, every time that he has play time in the game on defense as a linebacker, he is subpar at best and very disappointing to watch him play. You would think after all the extra play time that he's gotten at linebacker for Miami, you would expect that he would be doing a lot better. He has not improved. So I would be okay once again with signing him as a special teamer / depth piece at linebacker, but nothing more. And that would be a very minimal contract, under $1 million. So that's the only way I'd be okay with keeping him. Kendall Lamb, he's going to retire. So let that one go. Emmanuel Ogbah. A lot of people are saying, let him go. I disagree. I think that he would stay with Miami. He loves Miami. He's happy with this team. And he plays well, and certainly well enough to be a rotational depth player at tackle. Or, I'm sorry, at linebacker. The way linebackers work on this team, sometimes it gets confusing who's what. But He's the linebacker, and I think it would be good to keep him. And once again, small amount of money. The two big ones here that are the most important that we should re-sign. The two huge ones, well, the two that we should talk about, I really don't think we're going to be able to sign one of them. The first one I think we need to re-sign is Tyrell Dodson. Tyrell Dodson was a beast this year. He had more interceptions than any player in our secondary, which is amazing considering he's a linebacker. Dodson had quality play. One of the best ones we had on defense when he was in there, and he played great. So, knowing that, we definitely need to get Tyrell Dodson on a 2, maybe a 3-year contract. He's worth it, and I don't feel like he would insist on an insane amount of money, and I think it would help our team a bunch. So, Tyrell Dodson should be re-signed by the Miami Dolphins. Javon Holland, he's going to want too much money. I would love to have him back. I feel like if he wasn't playing for a contract and trying to keep himself healthy this year, he would have played a lot better. But he didn't. He played kind of weak, and he's wanting a lot of money. So I don't see us keeping him. I have a feeling he's going to sign with another team, which is a bummer. But moving on. That's the free agent list. That's it. It's not that bad. And if we do, like I said, with the money situation, if we restructure a few people and cut a couple, we'll be in a pretty good situation. And we'll have more than enough money to take care of our existing free agents and re-sign the ones that we need to re-sign. I forgot to mention Kader Kohou. He's up for a contract as well, and we definitely need to keep him. He's a very strong nickel cornerback. And not only is he strong at nickel, he can play, not the greatest, but he can play on the outside on the number 1 or number 2 receiver. He's done it for us repeatedly. And he's really improved his play near the end of this year. Really, really improved. Like, probably he's been excellent the last half of this season. So I would love to see Kader Kohou stay with Miami, get a contract. Probably could keep it relatively cheap. And he likes it in Miami. That's his home. He's happy here. I think it would be an easy signing, and it would be good for the defense to have a little bit of consistency and keep that cornerback room relatively intact. So that's where we're at with our free agents. That's what we should be looking to re-sign, those players. The other players we should let walk. And some of it's sad, some of it's kind of like, I wish we didn't have to let go of him, but we need to. We need to. The players that I've talked about are the players that we should keep. And do what we can to keep them. Most of those players we should be able to re-sign with no issues. Now, here's the kicker. This is the part that gets interesting. If we want to make our draft BPA, we have to have a successful first and second round in free agency. So the things that I'm talking about is needs as we move down this list and we talk about some of the players that are in free agency. Let's keep in mind there are 2 rounds of free agency. The players that are available will change. Most of the quality players that are in free agency are going to exist in the first round. After that, they're going to get sucked up. So a lot of these players that we need to pick up need to happen soon. We're not going to have a ton of money by the end of the first round of free agency. What we will have is the increase in salary cap at the beginning of the year. We'll have that. That's $24 to $27 million. We will also, and we're already 1.5 million above, or under the cap. So we're in the green, and we'll end up with about $26.5 million, is what I'm guessing. Right around there. And we could make that a little better if we made a couple restructures before the end of the round 1 of free agency. Do a couple restructures, those restructures that I talked about in the previous video about the money. Go watch that video. And we could wind up with about $45 to $50 million to work with in this first round of free agency, which is a very, very substantial amount and could cover just about all of our needs. So now we're going to talk about how to do that. Now, keep in mind that when we go through these lists of free agents and we talk about what's available on the market, I'm keeping in mind and thinking about the fact that we're going to wind up with about $40 to $50 million to work with for our free agencies. And I'm trying to keep the expenses pretty low and not looking for the huge splash player, okay? So keep that in mind as we go through this. I'm not looking to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on one player or something. I'm looking for a way to do this to save some money, keep the deals team friendly, and to improve the team at the same time. It can be done. It can be done. So let's get into this. The list, and that what I think not all of our needs. This is not all of our needs, this list that I'm about to pop up. This is what I think we should look for in free agency right now. As free agency is about to open up, this is what we should be looking for. That list isn't very large, is it? I mean, are you overwhelmed by this list? I'm not. It's a list. It is. There are a lot of things that we need on this team, but this is stuff that we need more than the rest. Now, also, please keep in mind, I'm not talking about signing depth players. I'm not talking about signing practice squad players. I'm not talking about backup players. I'm talking, except for the quarterback, I'm talking about mostly players that we need on the field, whether it's starters or rotational players. Like, defensive tackles usually are on a rotation. They come in and they come out. They know when they're going in and out for the most part. So we need rotational players and starters, people that make a difference and can play. So I'm not talking about anything else. No depth, no future players, none of that. No practice squad, nothing. Just players that we need to play. So that first one up there is very important. Very important. It's going to change so much for our team to have a couple guards that can play the game. Not players that have been transplanted into the guard position. Not players that don't know what they're doing. Not players that suck. And there's a way to do this. Now, this is actually a really good free agency to be looking for a guard. There's a bunch on the market. And like I said, they're not all going to be available, but there's some that we should be looking at here. And I'm thinking around $12 to $15 million for two guards could get us into a very, very good position, especially compared to what we've had. So, the ones that my mind is focused on here, now I'm not looking for, pardon me, I'm not looking for older players. I'm not looking for players that are near the end of their career. I'm not looking for overpriced players. I'm looking for players that could sign a team-friendly deal, still make some money, and would be a definite improvement over what we've had. So, the first one that comes to my mind when I look at this is Patrick McCarry from Baltimore. He's a fantastic guard. He's got good size. He's been six years in the league, and let me look here. I think he's averaging about $5 million a year. We could give him a little bump there, give him $1 million or $2 million extra, and we could probably snipe him right away from Baltimore. And Patrick McCarry is a good offensive guard. That's one. The other one that really, really catches my eye, and I mean, there's a few here. So this is number two. The second one that catches my eye is Will Hernandez from Arizona. He's a fantastic guard, extremely underrated, very reliable. 6 years in the league. And both these players are under 29 years old, or 29 years old or younger. Will Hernandez is 29. Patrick McCarry is 27. They both are taking around $5 million a year. We could sign those two guys, give them some incentive to come play for us for around $7 or $8 million a year. And for $15 million, we have just made our offense 10 times better. That's all it takes for our offense is a better offensive line. I guarantee you. If you don't believe me on this, I really don't know what to say. It's so bleedingly obvious. So painfully obvious. It should be smacking you in your junk right now. Oh my goodness, all we need is guards. It's true. There's other things we need to get right. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is to make the best improvement in our team the easiest and quickest and most inexpensive way. Pick up 2 guards in free agency. That'll lighten the load for the draft as well and the list of needs we have in the draft. Should we still draft offensive linemen in the draft? Absolutely. But is it something that's going to make us feel like we need to use our first 2 or 3 picks on it? No. We don't have to do that anymore if we pick up a couple good guards in free agency. 1 at minimum. But I digress. We talked about Patrick McCarry from Baltimore. We talked about Will Hernandez from Arizona. The other couple that I wanted to talk about is Mekhi Becton from Philadelphia. He's 26 years old. I know he had the injury, but last year he played great. And he really improved with his reliability as well. I think adding Mekhi Becton would be a good thing for Miami. Now, he's on a very small contract, $2.75 million. He would need a little more than that. I'm guessing around $7 or $8 million at least a year to play. I think that's about what he's going to be looking for, and it would be worth it. I really do. I really think it would be worth it. So that's another one to look at. And another one that I still, Dudley Durong and me were both clamoring for this guy last year. Clamoring. Dalton Risner from Minnesota. He's a fantastic guard. He's 29 years old, 6 years in the league. He's making $2.5 million, just under $2.5 million. We could put him in a $5 million a year contract, still paying him chump change. Do you know what we're paying Liam Eichenberg and Robert Jones? Just over $2 million each. The difference in the price between Robert Jones, Liam Eichenberg, and Dalton Risner is almost nothing. And the jump in quality would be insane. These guys are players that we should look at. Also, John Feliciano from the 49ers. Another great person to look at. He is 33 years old, so that's the one bummer about him. But he's making $2.75 million a year. It wouldn't take much to pull him away. These are all undrafted free agents, so they're testing the waters. We could get these guys. What's the other one? Nate Herbig. Nate Herbig from the Steelers. Let me see if I can find him real quick. Nate Herbig is another great one. He's like 25 or 26 years old. And, he's 26 years old, and he's making $4 million a year. These are players that aren't going to be demanding much more than that, and we could get them at a good price. These guards are good guards, significantly better than what we have. Your quarterback will thank you, and he'll thank you with touchdowns. Guaranteed. If we have a couple guards from those guards that I just listed, and there's more here on this free agent list that we could look at, but those are the ones that caught my eyes. Now, like I said, there's so many guards right now that are available that are such an improvement because, let's face it, the guards that we have are not very good. So looking to improve that position would be fairly simple, and we could do it for an inexpensive price. So let's look at the next thing on that list, and that's defensive tackles, okay? Now, I know that this is something that we have a very, very, very big need for. Big need. And it's not the kind of position that you can really skimp on because they make a difference. You get a couple defensive tackles in there to help out with Sealer, and we're going to be righteous on defense. So there's a few on this list that we could look at around the $5 to $10 million range or cheaper that would be good improvements on what we had. So let's talk about a couple of these, okay? The first one that comes to my thoughts, and we might not be able to get him because this is a divisional opponent, but it would be amazing to have Javon Kinlaw, the defensive tackle from the Jets. He's got 5 years of experience. He's 27 years old, and he's making peanuts. He's making $4 million a year. That's somebody we could pick up for a relatively inexpensive price. $5, $6 million, $7 million maybe. He's not going to be asking for much more than that. Just a matter of would the Jets actually trade with Miami for that or actually allow him to, It doesn't really matter too much because he's an undrafted free agent or unrestricted free agent. Earlier, I might have said undrafted free agent instead of unrestricted. Whoopsie. Unrestricted. Another one, Sebastian Joseph. He's 29 years old, making $4 million with Tennessee. These players would increase would increase the performance of our defense immensely. Let's see, who else? Oh, yeah. There's a lot. So looking at these couple players, 27-year-old Greg Gaines from the Buccaneers. 27 years old, 6 years of experience. He's making $3.5 million with the Bucs. It would be amazing to have him. Now, this is a good one to think about because he wouldn't have to move very far. He could even keep his home, probably. This would be an appealing trade or an appealing signing for him. Greg Gaines at defensive tackle across from Zach Sealer would be great. And it would be an easy thing for him to transition into. $3.5 million is what he's making. Throw a little extra money on that, and I'm sure he would love to come here. A lot of people want to talk about how Miami is not a desirable place to play. You got to be joking me. Players would love to play there. The tax money, the city, the facilities, the coaching staff. People want to talk smack about our coaching staff all they want, but the players like our coaches. So, unless your name's Javon Holland. So, there are defensive tackles that we could snag. John Jenkins with Las Vegas. He's older. He's 35 years old, so he's not going to command much money, but he would definitely help out. Another one to think about here, Leki Fotu, and there's another Jet. They got a lot of defensive tackles, and they're not going to be able to keep them all. So if we could get in there and snipe one or two of them, oh man, that would be great. And Leki Fotu is not a slouch. He's only making $2.5 million, I think. Wouldn't take much to pick him up. And he's young. He's 26 years old. So someone to think about there. Let's see, who else? There was another one here I wanted to mention that kind of caught my eye. Yeah. The other one I was thinking about, he's 28 years old. His name's Derek Nottie, and he plays for Kansas City. And he's not going to catch a ton of money. He's a $2 million a year player, but like I said, that would be a great player to have too. Like I said, there are a lot of defensive tackles in this free agency class, and they're not bad. The easy thing to work out here for a relatively inexpensive amount of money. So you're thinking maybe $22 million, and we would have 4 of our top 7 needs taken care of in free agency. 2 offensive guards and 2 defensive tackles. Done. Where do I sign? These are our problems, and they're so easily solvable, especially with the free agent class and the draft class that we have coming up. I told you, I'm a hopeful fan. And the reason I'm hopeful still, after all this stuff that's been going on, is because of the situation we're in. It seems bleak. And if you're a casual fan, and you're not looking at this situation, I could see how you would see this as bleak, but it's not. We have a chance to do something here and fix this team pretty efficiently. All it's going to take is for Chris Greer to pull his head out of his ass. So we'll see if that happens. But moving on, the next thing I wanted to talk about is our need for, what did I have next? I had safety. Safety is the next need we have. And we need more than one safety, but if we sign one safety in free agency round 1, we'll be looking a lot better, especially, as a whole, before the draft and before round 2 of free agency. So safeties. This is another one. There's a lot of safeties out there right now, guys, and we should be encouraged. The main one that I really want to look at that I'm liking, there's 2. There's 2 that I'm really, really liking. They're both strong safeties. And I'll talk about free safeties too. But for right now, the 2 strong safeties that I'm looking at they would fit well in the system. And they have experience in the system that I'm talking about that we run. Number 1, Julian Blackmon from the Colts. Julian Blackmon is a good player. He's 26 years old, 5 years of experience. He's making $3.7 million a year. We could pick him up very inexpensive, under $5 million for sure. And once again, he's an unrestricted free agent. Which means if he likes the deal and he wants to sign, he signs. Done. I think that would be an amazing signing. It would help us out a bunch. The other one, Jordan Fuller from Carolina, would be another huge help. Familiar with the system, knows how to play well. He's 26 years old, just like Julian Blackmon, and he's making 3.2 million-ish. Another cheap player that we could pick up that would greatly help us at safety. Now, as far as free safety goes, there's a few out there, but we might as well maybe look for a free safety in the draft or the second round. But you could look, let's see. You could look maybe at Houston for Eric Murray. That would be a good one. He's not making much money. He's under $2 million. He's 30 years old, 31. Let me look. He's 31 years old, but he's a good player. So, Rodney McLeod, that's another one. Is it McLeod? Yeah, Rodney McLeod from the Browns. That's another one. Another free safety that would fit right in and plays well. There's things we can do at safety, and it would be very inexpensive to pick one up in free agency. And I feel like if we're going to have two starting safeties, if we lose Javon Holland, we should have one with some good experience to take in under his wing one of a new safety that we draft, or a younger, extremely younger one we pick up in the second round of free agency, or an undrafted free agent, or undrafted. So there's things we can do there. This is a very good free agent class for the needs that we have. And I'm sure you're starting to see it now. The next thing we can look at is cornerback. Our corners, it's not the greatest, but we do have some players that are up and coming that are getting better and better. Storm Duck. I'm telling you, that kid is going to be a beast. If he keeps working and playing the way he's playing, we're going to be okay. So Storm Duck is one of those ones that I feel like we should keep, and Kader Kohu, and of course Jalen Ramsey. We really could use maybe one more free agent cornerback, and there's a decent list available, and you could get one for a fairly inexpensive price. The one that really catches my ear hole is Mike Hilton, the cornerback from Cincinnati. He's 30 years old, but only $6 million, and he's probably not going to take much more of a contract than that because he is older. But he can play. Stephon Gilmore, 34 years old, but his last contract was $7 million a year. He's not going to get that contract again. So Stephon Gilmore, the Minnesota's probably going to let him walk, and it would be a good pickup for us because even though he's older, I'm usually trying to keep what I'm looking for under 30 years old, but some players, even with their age, are appealing. Mike Hughes from Atlanta, that's another one we could look at. He's 28 years old, 7 years of experience playing in the league, and $3.5 million was his last contract. He's not going to take much more than that. There is a huge list of cornerbacks that are available, and there's a lot of good ones. Jonathan Jones from New England. These are unrestricted free agents, and Jonathan Jones is good. I know he kind of got put on an island a lot last year, and he struggled sometimes, but he's a good player. He's 31 years old though. Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy is an $8 million a year cornerback, so it might not be the best way to go that way, or best to go that way, but there are options. Is all I'm saying. C.J. Henderson from Pittsburgh is another one. He's around the $5 million mark. And he's 26 years old, and he plays well. Any player that comes from Pittsburgh is going to have a little bit of a dog mentality just because of where they've been playing. So it would be good to have somebody like that on our team. White is another one that I was thinking about from Baltimore. He's 30 years old, but he's a $4 million a year cornerback. There's things we can do. There's players we can find. That's my point. Like I said, the players, plug them in, whoever, and get what you can. But plug them in as you see fit. The players, there's so many available that you could look at this list and you could go through these players, and you're going to find tons of players that we could pick up easily. It's just a matter of Chris Greer picking up the phone and calling these teams for the players that we need and not the players that he thinks are pretty. And here's the one that I'm sure you've all been waiting for. Our quarterback. Well, yes, we need a quarterback. But it's not just any quarterback. We need a number 2 quarterback. A backup. Not a third string. I think Tyler Huntley would be a fantastic third string quarterback. And even if we picked up a backup quarterback in free agency, we could still draft a quarterback, especially if we do what we need to do in free agency. That opens up the ability to do things like draft a quarterback in the 5th or 6th or 7th round. And there's, you always should draft a quarterback here and there. You should always do that because you never know what you're going to wind up with. You could wind up with something incredible. And, if you're not drafting BPA, then you could miss out on that. Or if you don't have the freedom to do that. So let's look at these free agent quarterbacks. We're going to skip some of them because I just think they'd be terrible. But there are some on this list that I think would be interesting to look at. And some of these quarterbacks aren't going to take the same kind of contract that they have now. Obviously, one of the first ones that I could talk about is Justin Fields. But Justin Fields probably wants to be a starter. I'm not sure he would take a deal where he knows he's probably going to be a backup. But if he did want to come to Miami, $4 million for a backup quarterback contract would be pretty righteous. That'd be pretty awesome to have. So, something to think about there. The ones I do think would be a good fit and would be happy to take a backup quarterback role. Number 1, Joe Flacco. $4.5 million. He can sling it. He's old. He's 40 years old. But he's a good quarterback. And he could play the backup role very well. And he could also teach Tua a thing or two. You never know. It might not hurt. Jimmy Garoppolo. He's 33, but like I said, he's proven that he can play the game. And he's $3.5 million, something like that. Yeah, $3.2 million. About that. That's what he's going to be getting. He's not going to get much more money than that. You could also look into the Tennessee Titans at Mason Rudolph. And I'm not talking about quarterbacks that are going to be starters. So if you think we need a starting quarterback, if you think that we need to cut to I don't know what to say to you. It's such a lazy, casual take. I want a new quarterback. I need a new quarterback. Our quarterback sucks. No, you don't. I don't care if you want one. You don't need a new quarterback. And Tua doesn't suck. Is he elite? No. But he doesn't suck. He's a good starting quarterback in the NFL. And if he had half a chance to throw the ball sometimes, if he had more than a second and a half, you'd be surprised what he can do. So, we're looking at that. Another one that would be interesting to look at and has the same kind of abilities that Tua does, not as good, but the same kind of style and accuracy and all that. Joshua Dobbs from San Francisco. He's making $2.25 million, and he's not going to take much more than that. And he would be happy to be a backup quarterback. And if he came in, he could win some games. You could look at Russell Wilson. I doubt it. I think he wants to be a starter, so I don't think that's going to happen. Tim Boyle. No, I'm just joking. Not Tim Boyle. But you could look to Daniel Jones as a backup and let him fight for that second string. See what happens. Who knows? Sometimes you get players in a different situation than what they were in, and they become different. So we'll see. The point is there's a lot of quarterbacks on this list. And there's some I didn't mention, but there's Cooper Rush. You could look at him too. I mean, he has flashes, and he's $2.5 million. There's quarterbacks on this list. Carson Wentz. I know he had a terrible game at the end of the year against the Broncos, but I wouldn't look at that game as all out. Carson Wentz was playing with none of the starters for the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Broncos were playing all of their starters. So I wouldn't think too much there. Carson Wentz can be decent, and he could come in and win some games. So, aside from that, I don't see much in the quarterback room. That might be the smallest area of free agency that we could look in for help, but there is some players there that we could sign that would give us a better position than Tim Boyle, or the name that shall not be named. We could do better than what we've had as a backup quarterback. And since we don't know if Tua can stay healthy, there's a definite need for a backup quarterback that can hold his own if he needs to go into the game. So, unless anybody know Ryan Fitzpatrick's number, maybe we can call him and see if he wants to come out of retirement. That would be cool. I'd be down for that. So, if we do those things on that list right there, free agency, 2 guards, 2 defensive tackles, a safety, a cornerback, and a backup quarterback, 7 players. We could get enough money to do all of that with the increase in the salary cap from the NFL and with a couple of restructures. Pretty painless to fill a majority of our needs. And if we did that, if we follow something along the lines of this list right here that I have in front of you, that would be enough to make it to where we could make our draft with 10 picks mostly BPA. Mostly. It would certainly give us more freedom. And if we did that, I would feel a lot better about trading that first pick for a couple extra picks. Trade out of the first round for an extra second round and a couple fourth rounds or something like that. There are teams that are going to want to do that because they don't have the free agency freedom that we have right now. Not because of money, but because of the players that we need line up well with the free agency class that is out there right now. And the draft lines up well with the needs that we have as well. That's why we're not in as bad of a shape as everybody thinks we are. The money isn't as bad, the draft isn't as bad, and free agency isn't as bad either. Not trying to give you unwarranted hopium here. I'm trying to give you hopium that's warranted. There's a reason to be hopeful. Not blindly hopeful, but hopeful. I hope you guys can understand that and not think that I'm just being crazy. But I hope I showed and communicated that this situation isn't as bad and bleak as everybody thinks it is. But what do I know? I'm just a crazy Alaskan that happens to be a Dolphins fan. Thanks for watching the video. I appreciate it. If you guys could like, share, subscribe, comment, tell me what you think. Who should we go for in free agency? Do you think we should look for the people that I talked about, or do you have somebody else in mind? Talk to me about it. I answer all the comments. I like to get involved and talk with the people who watch my videos. So until you guys see me again, thank you. Fins up and stay hopeful.